Feel uneasy on your feet? Need assistance to walk? Do you use a wheelchair and want to stand more? What if you could stand stronger and feel steadier on your feet? What would this mean for your daily life and those closest to you? Join our dance-based walking program to improve balance, coordination, strength, and stamina. Wednesdays, May 18th to June 22nd at 2 p.m. at the iconic Columbia City Theater in partnership with Rainier Avenue Radio and Hugs That Empower nonprofit. Walkers, wheelchairs, and canes welcome. If you can stand and bear weight for even just 5 seconds, come dance to walk with Tango Stride.
This is Big Poppy, host of Jazz from the Cabinets. Join me each week for a listening tour of the first century of jazz, an eclectic mix of Dixieland, big band, cool jazz, bebop, contemporary jazz, world jazz, all jazz in all forms. That's Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy on Rainier Avenue Radio, streaming worldwide on rainieravenue.world.
We got the feeling now. Yeah.
R&B, soul, funk, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We give you all that and more on Star Time. Join me, Paul Pearson, for a 2-hour trip through the history of R&B. A new episode every week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Come and get the feeling on Star Time on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
How would COVID vaccines work in your body? Here are 3 things to know. Number 1, a vaccine is basically a training session for the immune system. Vaccines teach the immune system to look for the key features of a virus. So when a virus does show up, it's ready to fight it off. Number 2, a vaccine gives your body a plan to recognize the virus. Then your immune system starts preparing by making antibodies, or fighter cells, that stay in your blood as protection in case the virus tries to invade. What this means is you get immunity against the disease without having to get sick first. Number 3, when enough people's bodies know how to fight off a virus, it has nowhere to go. That slows the spread. When people get a vaccine, we're able to stop the spread quicker and get closer to ending the pandemic. To learn more, go to covidvaccinewa.org. A message from the state of Washington.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Don't forget to log on www.rainieravenueradio.world.
Well, hello there, world. Bettina Carey here, and I'm the founder and CEO of We Empower You, the global community, and WeEmpowerYourLife.com, the website. And we're shattering glass ceilings right down to the floor. So if you're looking to shatter yours, you've come to the right place. Today, I'm going to talk all about statistics. And one of the statistics I want you to know about is that 81% of U.S. adults are worried about a recession hitting in the not too distant future. After 2 years of a pandemic, Americans are worried that the economy may actually decline. In fact, a new poll reports 94% are concerned about inflation and or upset about it. Americans say inflation is the top problem facing the country. That said, my next guest says that instead of worrying, he wants everyone to experience a life where their theme song is "Don't Worry, Be Happy." My next returning guest is Troy Thompson. He helps individuals and businesses pay less in taxes, eliminate debt in half the usual time, and grow their money in a safe, liquid, protected from losses. He was an active duty Army nurse, just like myself, although I wasn't in the Army, for 11 years with deployments to Kosovo and Afghanistan. Troy retired from the U.S. Public Service in April of 2018. His nursing background helps him educate people on how to also improve their health as well as their wealth. Today's guest is going to share insights on how we should be living and saying, "Don't worry, be happy." Welcome today to our show, Troy. It's good to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you, bud.
Well, yeah, that is so bizarre. We're off to a great start here.
The camera must not have popped in. Why don't we just keep me on the screen, Daniel, and we'll wait for you to figure out your camera situation. And so let me just share a little bit about my own story to kick us off here. So when my son was just graduating from high school, I bought my very first life insurance policy. And I was a single mother at the time. And I thought if anything ever happened to me, I wanted him to be okay. And then later in life, my father died, leaving only a very small life insurance policy that was provided by the military for my mother. He never wanted to actually discuss dying, so he didn't. His philosophy was, if I don't talk about it, I just might get out of here alive. Well, as the story goes, he didn't. And in 2006, he left this earth. And we had to deal with a very small life insurance policy that he'd left my mother. And so with that said, I am have the interest in interviewing Troy here because he knows better than most what it's like to be in the situation, because he's working with families all over the United States here that in the states that he's qualified to and licensed in, that is, that are facing the question to buy life insurance, to not buy life insurance, to keep my assets here or to keep my assets there. And I've worked with him recently, and I have to say, I am in the position of saying, don't worry, be happy. So let's see. Oh, we've got you back here now, Troy. You know,
yes, hello.
We've talked about it in the past. You have some other interesting stories. What do you say about this idea of life insurance?
Well, it's kind of like the planting the tree analogy. You know, the best time to do it is 20 years ago, and then the second best is today. It will never cost less than it does today, because even if everything about me a year from now is the same in terms of my health and my height and weight, it's going to cost a little more because statistically speaking, I'm 1 year closer to death. And so it's one of those things. There's actually been quite a increase in people buying life insurance the last couple of years because especially say 2020, death and dying was on people's minds a lot more than maybe typically it had been. And so your particular story, I just want to thank you for sharing that, because I know, sometimes there can be a hesitation to share personal information in an open forum like this. And so I appreciate that. And so one thing I was thinking of related to your story is the benefit of working with a broker who has access to many different companies, because that allowed us to do what you did not think was going to be possible. And so that's something that a person who's a broker, they can offer different companies, different products that helps cover many different situations. Different needs come up from young to old, different medical conditions, mental health conditions, and so that's one thing that I provide to be able to cover many different situations.
You're absolutely right. Working with you has been a wonderful opportunity for me. And it is because you're a broker. We recently just did a plan for my daughter-in-law and my son rather, and to protect their family as well. And so being licensed in multiple states was a real advantage, I must say. So tell us a little bit about your story. I know that you didn't just, fall off the tomato truck and start into life insurance. And of course, we share a career in nursing. I also grew up in the military with my dad being in service. So thank you for your service as well. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to this career path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when as Bettina mentioned, when I first graduated from college, my career was as an Army nurse. And so I got some good advice from my first mentor, a senior officer, to go to a webinar put on by a company whose market niche is active duty military. And so it was all certified financial planners. And so I met with one of their planners and started a plan, and that included a life insurance policy. And so I was 22 years old. I had no debt because I make the joke that I joined the military for the money. So they paid for most of my school. So I had very little debt. I was single. I was renting. And so I had no need for a life insurance policy, but they explained reasons why, and it made sense to me. And so I did it. And so then through my career, it was just something that was of interest to me, insurance and investments. I took education courses. I continued to work with that company as a client for many years. And so then when it came time to retire from active duty, I just had a desire to do something different. And so insurance and finance was just something that was really appealing to me. And so that's how and why I got into it. And an extension of that, I also found that over the course of my career, when I would talk to coworkers and friends about insurance and finance and investments, the knowledge level was generally fairly low. And so what I enjoy doing is increasing individuals' financial intelligence so they can make an informed decision about their financial future.
That's great. And you've been informing me along the way too. I know we've known each other for around a year or so. And then you said to me, hey, Bettina, I have an idea for you. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that, you know? And, you know, you have some examples of people who didn't get so lucky. Within the last year or so, right through the pandemic, there was some lives that came into your conversation and they didn't choose what I chose, the path I chose. So why don't you share a little bit about what they experienced as a result?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually there's a couple of things there. So I'll address the last first. So I was, talking to a couple people about getting some life insurance coverage, and 3 of them drug their feet for various reasons. Life is busy, we get things going, and 2 of them ended up having a stroke and 1 died. And so those 2 that did have a stroke, there are plans that are available for them. But it dramatically shrinks the options that are available and significantly increases the price. And then of course the other man ended up passing, and the 2 individuals that had their stroke were in their 50s. A success story, though, to put something a positive spin here. Another scenario, a husband and wife that I met with a couple of years ago, and they did choose to do an application and put a plan in place. So went through the underwriting, it got approved, and then about a week after it was approved, he had a stroke. And now, thankfully, it was mild. He has a full recovery. He's back to work. He's doing well. Also a gentleman in his 50s. But the point is, since he has it in place, then if he had waited and then chose to do it now, then again, the options would be less because he would have had this stroke event in his history. But he chose to take care of it. So then now he's locked himself in.
Well, it's important for people to know that are listening and watching that, in fact, you can have had a medical condition, whether that be cancer or stroke or mental illness or something. A period of time may need to pass by. The price may be a little bit higher. That was a big awakening of information for me. I figured if you had any kind of medical condition that was significant, that you'd be pretty much out of luck. Turns out that's not the case, right?
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to depend on the type of product the person is looking for, how old they are, how many years they were removed. Let's say cancer, for example, how many years removed they are from their last treatment of that cancer. So there are lots of variables, and that emphasizes the importance of speaking to an individual and an expert in the insurance to find out your particular situation and what's available for you. And the other thing I wanted to quickly address that along those lines. So one is that you had said, it was an awakening moment for you that you just thought there wouldn't be this opportunity at all. And so it never hurts to ask, right? The worst you can get is no, or, well, I can get you something, it will be this. And the person decides if they feel like the expense is worth the reward. And then also back to an awakening that you had, which was our conversation of how you as a grandparent could do something for your children. Lots of people don't think about that either. They typically think of themselves, or like myself as a parent, then I put coverage on myself to help protect my child. There are situations, though, where the grandparent, and it wouldn't even have to be a grandparent, it just a family connection. There needs to be what's called an insurable need. And the owner of the policy does not necessarily have to be a spouse or the parent. It could be a grandparent. And so then it's a gift. It's a lifelong gift, especially for a child. Putting a plan in place for a child can be a lifelong gift where they have that coverage in place for their entire lifetime. And so that way, if, let's say something unfortunate happens, like a health condition, diabetes, cancer, stroke, that they have the plan in place. And then let's say things turn out fabulous and they have great health and they do well financially. Well, then there's money there that can be used for whatever. It can be used for vacation, retirement income, whatever. And so it's not just money in a pit.
Yes, well, we've started calling you the angel of freedom, right? Because you're giving us a lot of freedom. Our mind isn't taxed with worry and doubt about what's going to happen here. And of course, I love that you have me singing the song "Don't Worry, Be Happy" as well, in spite of the pandemic, looming recession and inflation. So how is it that you are helping folks in terms of living benefits? This is a distinction in the life insurance world, which is certainly one to explore. Give us a little bit of insight.
Okay. So there are two main elements to the living benefit concept of life insurance. And so I say life insurance is for the living. Bettina and I have a mutual friend who had a health condition. She got cancer, and it pretty much wiped her out financially. And that's one of the leading causes of bankruptcy, is a medical condition. And so life insurance today, good plans, right? So it depends on the company and the product, but there are many companies and many products that allow the individual to access that money in the event of a critical illness or a chronic illness, such as cancer, heart attack, or stroke, or a long-term disability. Let's say the person is disabled to the point where they need help to go to the bathroom, help to get dressed. They can access the money in that situation as well while they're alive to be able to cover medical expenses. And the money can be used in any manner. Just typically we think of it as helping to pay for medical expenses, pay for the mortgage. So that's one piece of the living benefits. And then the other piece of the living benefit is, I'll back up for a moment and say there are three main pieces to a financial plan. So the first is insurance. It's kind of boring, and most people just think of insurance as an expense. But until the person gets their money accumulated to a point that they don't need the insurance anymore, insurance is an important piece of the financial puzzle. So the first piece is insurance. The second piece is savings. And the third piece is investments. Most people want to flip the order around, and because the investing, that's what is exciting, and seeing the market go up and down and seeing my money grow and that account balance change. And so that's where most people start, but really that's the third piece. So back to the don't worry, be happy, and the living benefits. Life insurance can also be a savings tool, and it can be a very powerful savings tool that can be an alternative to, say, a Roth IRA. It can be an alternative to where people, instead of storing money in the bank, they can store their money in their life insurance policy, and they can get a much higher rate of return that is tax-free. It's still liquid, so they can still access it when they need it. And it has far fewer restrictions on it in terms of the use of that money. So they can use it for however they want. With those qualified plans, IRA, 401k, they're qualified with the government. So they're qualified for special tax privileges in the tax code based on what the government has laid out. And so since the government has put these restrictions on it, then the government says when that money can be taken out without penalties and possibly taxes, what it can be used for, especially if the individual is under 59 and a half years old. And so with the life insurance piece, using the life insurance as a piece of the puzzle, it gives more freedom of the money, and it can be used however the individual wants. Quick example is I use mine to buy a car. So instead of borrowing from the bank or borrowing from the dealership, I borrowed the money from the life insurance company and I make my payments to them. And that's kind of beyond the details of that are beyond the scope of today's interview. But the point is there's another way to do it, to get the money to do two jobs at the same time. And so that's a quick summary of some of the living benefits. And so that's why I say life insurance is for the living, because it's more than just a death benefit.
Yes, yes. And you have a website that is sfglifesolutions.com. Daniel, you can pop that up there on the screen for
You
folks
did
to
it. I see it.
There we go. It's your main website, and it has all the content, life insurance, debt-free life, disability, critical illness, retirement, smart start, and so much more. And scrolling down a little bit further, you can find out a little bit more about Troy Thompson. Troy, how can folks get a hold of you? Let's scroll down to the information where your phone number and email reside there.
Yes. So they're at the bottom. It's also up at the top. I prefer a phone call. I know today lots of people like to text or email, and that's perfectly fine. I will absolutely receive that as well. Just to go through these types of details of reviewing your situation, and in order to give adequate advice, then I have to have a feel for your situation, so that way I know what I'm recommending is appropriate for the situation. So I prefer a phone call. That number comes right to me. As a friend of ours says, give out your personal information or your personal phone call, and then they will give out personal information to.
Yes, go ahead and give it out for those that are actually listening again.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So the number 253-228-7619, and then the website sfglifesolutions.com. I was blending together the email and the website. Yep. Something that I was thinking of through our conversation here too, on this kind of life insurance and the concept of don't worry, be happy. Back in March of 2020, so just a quick review here for those that may have put this out of their brain already, the stock market crashed in that time because there was so much unknown with what was going on with just the new information about the coronavirus and what was going to happen. We had no idea. And so my personal accounts and all of my clients' personal accounts stayed the same. All right. Not a single dollar was lost in that time. And so that part of their financial plan, they could sleep at night. That's why I've nicknamed some of what I do the SANPRA, sleep at night private retirement account, because what I do is not directly in the market. And so they can sleep at night knowing that piece of their financial puzzle is protected from market loss, and they don't have to be involved in the up and down roller coaster of the market if they don't want to be. What I do also works synergistically, complementary to the conventional approach. So I use the analogy of fruit. And so I talk about the conventional approach being an apple. And when I say conventional, I'm referring to money in a 401k or an IRA. Yep. That's an apple. And what I do, I call an orange. Many times financial advisors and insurance agents, they want to do an apples to apples comparison between the two strategies. And that's really not appropriate in my opinion, because one's an apple and one's an orange. They serve different purposes and they work together. They can be complementary for the person's overall financial plan. And so a quick point that makes me think of our current situation today. So let's say I'm retired and my retirement account, my IRA account, has gone down 15-20% because that's what's happened in the market here. Well, with the insurance strategy, then what I can do is I could access the money for my insurance policy and take tax-free income from that. And then that gives me time to allow my IRA money to recover. So, eventually at some point, the market's going to recover and come back up. I don't know if that's 1 month or 18 months. But when I have this other piece to my puzzle, it's going to allow me to be more aggressive with my stock portfolio in my IRA because I have my sleep at night plan. And so what I do is complementary to the conventional.
I tell you, every time I talk to you, Troy, I learn something new. Don't be surprised if you'll be getting a call from me to add one more support, one more idea here. You also work with businesses, you work with individuals. And the one big thing that I've gotten out of this is whether you have a policy, whether you think you couldn't possibly ever get one, that making the application is the only way to determine whether or not you qualify. And I just went through this with my family, and 3 applications were made. 2 were actually accepted, and 1 we have to just wait. She's too young with her situation for us to know whether she would not get a policy in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. But at the end of the day, I had no idea. I thought all 3 of them were out, to tell you the truth. So I highly recommend working with you. One of the other benefits to close with, maybe you can, your last thought can be a little bit about what's the difference between working with a broker versus anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in my opinion, that's what I prefer to do, for my own insurance needs, for example, property and casualty insurance, homeowners and car insurance. So a broker has a contract with many different insurance companies. So for example, I'm a broker that allows me, I think I had 10 different 1099s when I did my taxes. So I wrote business with, say, 10 different insurance companies last year. That's a bit of a headache for the accountant and me. It's a good thing for clients, though, because it allows me to get what's indicated for that situation. So other agents that work for what's called a captive company, then they're only allowed to offer what is available through that particular company. So that's a brief summary of the difference between a broker and what's called a captive agent.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the show today, and for teaching us lessons about how we can sleep really well and have a theme song called Don't Worry, Be Happy. So our next show on Rainier Avenue Radio here is going to be The Wonderful World of Fine Art, episode 22. Thank you, everyone, for listening and or watching. Please leave us a comment. I read them, and I love your feedback. Join us back here every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we'll look forward to seeing you back again next week. Bye now. Take care, everybody. Coaching is a noble profession, but in these current tumultuous times, so many talented coaches are finding that they simply cannot connect with people that they could be helping. And people need our help more than ever these days. That is why I conceived the We Empower You Global Community and Global Virtual Summit. I'm Bettina Carey, and I'm inviting you to join with some of the world's leading empowerment coaches, trainers, authors, mentors, and thought leaders for our upcoming We Empower You Global Virtual Summit. There's an old adage and saying that goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. It is in that spirit of togetherness that we aim to help connect more talented coaches to the people that they might help. Join us for free and share your knowledge in this Find Wealth by Giving endeavor. And there isn't a hidden fee or big sales pitch at the end. You will be shoulder to shoulder with some of the world's best thought leaders, newsmakers, and game changers. And you will see for yourself exactly what the We Empower You global community and membership is all about. It's a blend of altruism and business, to be sure. This endeavor is audacious, and we hope to plant seeds that take deep roots. So we need you. If you have a goal of helping others reach and achieve that next rung, if your work aids in lifting people out of self-limiting beliefs, if you're ready to fix the world one client at a time, or spread your message to the masses, you're welcome to join us for our We Empower You Global Summit. Tickets are free, but RSVP is required. Scan the QR code if you're watching on TV, or go to our website at weempoweryourlife.com and click on the Summit Tickets tab to get more information and to claim your free Zoom admission ticket. We empower you. Together we will go far.